Welcome to Right Side of the Brain, the arts and health podcast created by Interact Stroke Support. Our guest this week is the artist, illustrator and stroke survivor, Lynn Rutherford. This interview was recorded during the period of the lockdown. Lynn Rutherford, welcome to Right Side of the Brain.
Oh, thank you very much, thank you.
So, Lynn, let's start at the very beginning. Could you tell us about your childhood?
Yeah, I was quite lucky with my childhood because I always felt very loved and knew that I was loved, and the work that I've done since then, you know, I know how important that is, but I'll come to that later. So, but my dad was RAF, so we moved a fair bit, and I spent a lot of my formative years first in Berkshire and then in Scotland. And home life was fine, and I was surrounded by, you know, girlfriends and all of that, so that was all fine. School was a bit traumatic to start with, because I had a teacher who really didn't like English people, so I had a lot of hassle off her, and so I suppose it was racism of a kind. But the rest of school was great.
When you say she didn't like English people, was this in Scotland?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, do you have a vivid childhood memory?
I've got one from Scotland is going to the old-fashioned swimming baths on a Saturday on the train across the Tay Bridge to Dundee. And it was all very, very hot and sticky and noisy, and there was like kiosks all the way around the edge of the pool. Bearing in mind I'm 65 now, so this was a long time ago. It would have been more than 50 years ago. And it was all terribly exciting that we were allowed to do that and, you know, go off and do our swimming. So that. I was thinking there's loads of memories associated with that time, but that was my first taste of independence in a way.
So there you are. You're constantly moving around because of your dad's job in the RAF. What were your aspirations when you were growing up?
Well, I always fancied myself as something to do with science or nature. So, I went through a stage I wanted to be a marine biologist and then an astronomer. I really wasn't good enough at maths to be either of those things, so I ended up being a teacher. But that was a kind of the third aspiration that I came to, and I stuck with that. And then I changed career a lot after I started to teach, but more of that later. But I was always encouraged that the world was my oyster and go for it.
So, did you go to university?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Which one was that, and where did you go?
I went to London University, and I did a combined degree, as they were then, which was partly, it was half art. I did fine arts because I was good at art, and did education as well, psychology and sociology and all that. So you could do that then, do a combined teaching degree. And then I taught in London for 7 years.
So you were a teacher for 7 years, and then what happened after that?
Well, then in those days you could transfer from teaching to youth work, so I came back up to Norfolk when my family were. I didn't move back in with the family, but I came back up to Norfolk, and I did youth work for a lot of years, stayed in the Eastern Community Service, managed a rural patch with centres in it and village youth clubs, and did community arts work and all that sort of stuff, so I had a great time. And then about halfway through that, I had another change of career because I did my therapeutic training, and then I did sort of psychotherapy with teenagers then, till I had the stroke.
And before we talk about the stroke, could I just focus on this point of working with rural youth? Because I think that there will be a lot of people who listen to this podcast, and when they think of youth work, they think of the big inner cities, you know, with people from young people from very large council estates.
Yeah.
Can you describe the type of issues that rural youth faced and the problems that you had to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is similar, whether they're in an urban council estate or a rural isolated cottage, which is, you know, how you feel about yourself and your self-confidence and your inner life and your wanting to get in touch with the spiritual side and all that. I mean, teenagers are fantastic at all that. To change the world, to have an opinion, you know, all of that. The difference, I suppose, with rural young people was isolation. A lot of them were very isolated. And now, of course, they've got social media, which, although that comes in for a lot of criticism, I mean, you know, it does help because they can be in touch with each other. And sometimes they're in touch with each other too much. And there, you know, there was levels of abuse, etc., that kind of thing, eating disorders, all of that, just the same as there would be in an inner city. And you get some great people helping to be youth workers and training to be youth workers who haven't forgotten what it was like to be a teenager and go through that transition.
You're working away with young people. Could you then describe what happened with regards to the circumstances of your stroke?
Yeah, I mean, I'd finished with the county council and I was working at MAP, which is a big charity project in Norwich, still doing therapeutic work with young people. So everything was kind of normal. I was doing some work in schools as well, and I was fairly stressed, I think, because I'd lost my dad a few years before, and my mum was finding it really hard. And I'm an only one, so, you know, it all came down to me to look after my mum. So I found that all quite stressful. My husband had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's and wasn't very well. So, you know, lots happening. But other than that, I was fine. And so the day of the stroke, we'd been to, like so many people do, had a perfectly normal day, went to a plant fair, bought some stuff for the garden, came back, saw a friend for a cup of tea, and then from then on, I don't remember. My husband said that I came into the room and said something terrible is happening. I think I'm having a stroke. And he called the ambulance. The ambulance was very quick. It was only about 20 minutes. And I don't remember any of that until I woke up about 3 weeks later, and then I had another 3 weeks in hospital, so I had 6 weeks in all. And they thought that I was going to die. The hospital thought that I was going to die. So it was frightening in retrospect for me.
I know that you say that you obviously can't remember a lot of what happened there. But what's interesting in what you have just said is that you said to your husband, I think I'm having a stroke. The implication being that you knew what a stroke was. Yes.
I mean, I haven't had any direct experience in the family, but I knew that feeling of being lopsided and being unable to correct my balance, I think that was probably what was happening, but I don't remember.
And did you say that you were in the hospital, or you were in a coma for 3 weeks?
Yeah, I was out. Yeah, completely. Yes. Yeah.
And you come out of the coma, and you find out later that people thought that you just weren't going to make it at all. So this was a very, very severe stroke. Was this a bleed?
It was a bleed, not
right.
A clot, yeah.
Right. So what happened after that? What was your rehabilitation like?
They were fantastic in the hospital because they kind of understood that you need to try things out and sometimes not be successful at it, like I would overbalance occasionally, or, and they were very sort of matter of fact and friendly and caring without being in your face. So they were just great. And I had some physio walking up and down stairs, because they won't let you home until you can do all that. I couldn't remember numbers and my bank cards or any of that. So my stepdaughter, my husband's daughter, was absolutely fantastic with all that. And I had loads of visitors, and I think friends and family, grandchildren and stuff, and I'm sure all of those got me going, if you get my drift, made me more keen to get well, if you like. So I was really ready to come home by the time I finally came home. The only thing I was left with was double vision, so I wasn't driving to start with, and it took me a while to get strength back, I think, was the other thing. I felt quite weak.
Yeah. I recently did an interview with Juliette Bouvry, who's the chief executive of the Stroke Association.
Yeah.
And in the conversation, we were talking about stroke, and I asked her, what she had learnt about stroke, over the past few years that she's been the head of the Stroke Association. And she made a very interesting comment, which was that when she first took over, she was told by numerous professionals and experts that people could only make a recovery up to a certain period of time, up to about 6 months, and after 6 months, that's it. Whatever recovery you have made, it's not going to improve after that. But we have encountered so many people who defy that and who have improved, many, many years later. I'd just like to know your experience and views of that.
I'm with you on that one, I think. But I think the recovery that you make to start with, if you were doing a graph, is quite steep. Although I had trouble, I still have trouble with my eyes, but I am driving again and all that. But my strength has just slowly regained. My mental health, when I first came out of it all, I was terrified it was going to happen again. Now that's still with me. I had counselling about that, and from a psychologist who was lovely. That was very helpful. But I think that's improved. I think also because I'm having to care for someone and not focus on myself, which I'm not much anyway. And a lot of my therapeutic friends would say that's wrong, I should be focusing on myself. But that said, because I'm caring for somebody, that's made me have to gain strength even more. So I think it's still happening. I still think it's exactly 2 years on for me, and I think I'm still in very small steps making progress.
And so when you were discharged from the hospital, Lynn, I'm guessing that for a period of about 6 to 8 weeks there was professional intervention of occupational and speech therapy?
Yeah, there was all those. I didn't do much with the speech therapist. I met her in hospital, and I was lucky that I got all that was kind of there. I don't remember how it was before, but from being conscious, it was all there. It was my eyes really that were the main thing.
Lynn, what would you say that you have learnt about yourself post-stroke?
Well, I've learned that I'm loved, which is really important, and I've learned to accept help a bit more, because I found that really difficult. Because I always think that I can do things best, if I'm honest. So I've learned to accept help. I've learned that I'm tough and can get through stuff, but I've also learned that there's this kind of the spiritual angle. I don't have a set faith as such, but I do believe that when your time's up, your time's up, and it wasn't my time.
So do you believe that you're the same person that you were before your stroke?
Yes, I think I was. I think I am, but I think I've lost some things, and I'm not quite sure what those are, and I've gained others. So I'm kind of slightly different around the edges. That's a bit of a convoluted answer, but you know what I mean. I am the same person deep inside, but bits have changed.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of a play that the writer Nell Dunn wrote called Lost and Found, which was about stroke.
Was it?
And yes, and it the premise is that people obviously lose things about themselves, but they also find other things about themselves as well. You know, as they go along the stroke journey. A really fascinating play.
Yeah, I've written that down. I'm going to look that up. Yeah.
Lost and Found by the wonderful writer Nell Dunn.
Yeah, thank you.
Could you tell us, Lynn, about your artistic and creative journey? When did that start?
Well, I've always drawn and painted, so that's part of me, I suppose. And I love doing things for other people. So Lindsay, who I think is the other person that you've spoken to, and she's written a book which I illustrated. When I had the stroke, she was really keen that I get back to being creative, because that was one of the things that I'd kind of lost. Not for long, but it wasn't a burning desire like it always had been. So that got me back into drawing. So whilst I've always done painting, I did exhibitions when I did my degree and all that, and I've done exhibitions since. But post-stroke, it was again starting quite small and drawing, and she's very good at things not being too serious or heavy, but being appreciated nevertheless. And it was a lovely collaboration. We've done lots of things together, but that was a good collaboration, and that helped the healing, I think.
Could you just remind me again, what was your degree in?
Art and education. Right.
So you then used the skills that you'd learnt at university.
Yeah, and I've always painted, and I used that a lot with like community art stuff and murals with young people, and I love sort of sharing that side of things. And well,
just for the benefit of our listeners, Lynn, Lindsay, who you referred to, is Lindsay Dowding, who is a writer who also had a stroke, and she's the author of Charlie the Horse, Owl and the Planning Application, which is a book that's been published and which has illustrations by yourself.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
As I understand it, she's a writer, you're an illustrator and an artist. You both have strokes. You both end up in the same hospital.
Yes.
Is that how you got to know each other, or did you know each other before?
No, we've known each other years. We met singing, because that's another thing I love to do. We met in a choir, well over 20, 25 years ago, and have been friends and collaborated on silly charity concerts and all sorts of stuff together. Yeah, so she's been she's kind of the inspiration, and I pad out a few of the details. So we get on very well. We're good at different things.
So there you are, two friends who both have strokes.
Mm.
And were they at the same time, your strokes?
No, she was the year before me.
Mm-hmm.
The year before.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you feel, Lynn, needs to change to help stroke survivors?
I think, proper funding, both for the charity sector, the third sector, and NHS. I think that's key to it all, because then you can afford to take on the good people to do the work. The ones that I came across were absolutely fantastic. Got got no complaints about any of those. The support services, the way it all moves into place when someone's ill, all of that is good. They just need more of it for the people that come. And I also think the sort of thing that you're doing, which gives people a chance to think privately if they want to, because it's a huge shock, and it's a shock to families. And people don't always want to be held by this huge, noisy beast, if you like. They want some time privately to reflect on stuff, and I think what you're doing is absolutely ideal. So more of that, I think, is important. And to remember that everyone's experience of a stroke is as individual as they are people, really.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing to remember.
Lynn, as you will know, Interact take professional actors into hospitals and read to stroke patients on the hospital ward to stimulate memory, stimulate language, to alleviate the depression that is so often associated with stroke. So with that in mind, and you've sort of just touched on it there, what are your views of the arts in relation to health?
Well, I think a lot of people carry a lot of baggage because they weren't good at art at school, and I think you kind of need to get past all that and get people just to enjoy doing whatever it is they like doing that they can lose themselves in. And when you watch people creating, some like to talk, some like to be quiet, but you can completely lose yourself in a creative process and become bigger than who you are in a way. And there's some people who discover really late in life some amazing talents, But the other thing that you can do with arts, of course, is work cooperatively or singly. I just think it's good for you. It's good for you. And I mean, art materials can be quite expensive too. So that's another thought with it all.
You mentioned your eyesight, Lynn. So what is the situation with your eyesight in relation to your art and in relation to your painting?
Well, it's taken a bit of getting used to, but I've got prisms in my glasses which correct the double vision. So technically, I can do exactly the same as I did, and I can work closely, and I've got reading glasses, and it's just that I get very tired. My eyes get very tired. So the days when I spent all day painting, I don't do that anymore, but I still can paint, and that's great. That's a gift.
Yes.
Draw,
And what medium do you use? Do you use watercolor or oils or acrylics?
Well, I'm learning to use watercolor. I used oils when I was at college, and then went on to acrylic, and I've been using acrylic for many, many years. But I'm learning watercolors, which is lovely. I'm learning it, in a adult education art class, and it's a lovely thing to do, and it's hard. It's like rigorous and stretching me, which is good. Which is good.
And Lynn, are you based in Norfolk?
I am, I am. Windon.
In Windon. And so what's the stroke community like there?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I haven't really got in touch with other people at all, other than Lindsay. Mainly because I'm very absorbed with what's happening with my partner and Parkinson's disease. So I'm going to groups with him and all that sort of stuff. So I really don't know. There are stroke groups all over the county, but sometimes I don't want to be reminded of what could have happened, which is the other part of it all.
Yes, that's interesting. I do hear that quite a lot. That that there are sort of two types of people.
Yeah.
There are types of people who say to themselves they just don't want to be reminded of stroke and what happened, and they just want to lead their lives. And there's another type who want to share their experiences and with other people who have gone through something very similar to themselves.
Yeah. I think probably I'm coming around to the sharing bit more, but to start with, I wanted to keep it all really a long way off. I'm still here. Thank God for that. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think as the time between me and my stroke is getting wider, I'm getting more likely to want to talk to people.
And so what does the future hold for Lynn Rutherford?
Lots of painting, lots of singing, lots of dog walking, lots of working at Wyndham Arts Centre, which I volunteer at, and getting a bit of young people input, because I must never lose that. They balance life. Yeah.
And Lynn, just out of interest, where could people see your artwork?
Well, the last exhibition that I did was at Wyndham Arts Centre, so it'll be building up a supply to go into a new exhibition. So, because I haven't got that much left, and what I have done is for people, like I've done a watercolour for Lindsay of where she lives up on Yell. So I've got to build up a stock, and then I'll be doing, hopefully next year or the year after, probably another exhibition. And anything that Lindsay does that's sort of creative and booky that requires illustration, I might find myself involved in that as well.
Yes, there might be knowing Lindsay Dowding, there might be another book.
Yeah,
that she'll be planning.
Yeah.
Lynn Rutherford, thank you so much for being on Right Side of the Brain.
You're most welcome. And if I can help the project, which is at a slight distance from where I am, I'm really happy to, if you wanted to give me a ring anytime.
That was Lynn Rutherford. For more information on our work, please do visit our website at www.interactstrokesupport.org. And if you're feeling generous, please do click on the big red donate button. We very much look forward to your company on the next edition of Right Side of the Brain.